kind of tired for this one. I'm just waking up from a nap. It's been a long week. Shut up. So we're back with this time a survivor conversation. And I want to talk a little bit about something that a friend of mine brings up a lot, and I find it an interesting conversation. And that is, what is a safety perk? What is a crutch perk? What is a situational perk? Because they come up a lot. Well, let me explain. So we're gonna start looking at loadouts here. I'm not gonna put on David King. I will put it on white, just because white is bland and boring. So what we want to look at is what are situational perks, what are safety net perks, and what are crutch perks. So we're going to start with an obvious perk that I think is a crutch perk. Let's start, obviously you have Decisive Strike until the upcoming rework. I would say Adrenaline is a good crutch perk. Those are very good crutch type perks, like must-have perks. Lith can be a bit of a crutch. Urban Evasion, that's a bit of a crutch perk. Sprint Burst, Self-Care, well known. And then if you look at the green, everybody says the green perks are shit, but even then you do have a few crutch perks in there. I would say We're Gonna Live Forever being one, and maybe Plunder as being another. Now, what is a crutch perk? A crutch perk is a perk that is effective in all situations. So, for example, you could say that, well, We're Gonna Live Forever situational if no one gets hooked. Let's be real. Someone's gonna get hooked. Like, come on. You can take a hit for somebody. Plunders is gonna always be in effect because there's always gonna be a chest in the game. Urban Evasion and Sprint Burst will both be in for the same reason. There's going to be times where you're going to need to avoid the killer. You have Sprint Burst for that and Urban Evasion as well. Self-Care is a absolute crutch perk. These are types of perks that are always effective. Now that relegates every other perk to being situational and safety net. But what is the difference between those two perks? Well, let's give you an example. Aftercare is a situational perk. Dead Hard is a safety net perk. I would say Ace in the Hole is a situational perk. Deliverance is a safety net perk. A safety net perk is a situational perk that a condition has to be met for you to be able to activate it, but it can potentially save your life and win you the game. Deliverance is a great example of this. Basically, if you are able to get an unhook very early in the game, and later on in the game you are on first hook, Deliverance lets you unhook yourself. Now, this can be used in a number of situations. You can use this to put when the hatch is in play to unhook yourself before the last survivor either dies or leaves, and then go for the hatch if you know where it is. You can use this to unhook yourself when an exit gate has been opened. You can use this to unhook yourself when the killer is off chasing people if no one's involved and you can't risk a save. So Deliverance is very powerful. There is that caveat that you have to trigger it with performing the safe hook rescue. But it's incredibly strong, and there are just some times where you'll bring it and you'll never get to use it. Another great example of a perk that is a safety net perk is Unbreakable, letting you revive yourself once. Now, this is a bit more situational, but people always tell me, well, it's so situational, you don't need it all the time. Well, the difference is Unbreakable. What makes Unbreakable so effective is there are going to be those times where you can activate it, and it can win you the game. Every perk in Dead by Daylight, technically, is a situational perk. There's no perk in this game that I can say isn't situational. There has to be a cause and effect. The only thing I could say would be for Killer would be Ruin. Like, because they have to complete generators in order to get out. I mean, a thing like Breakdown only works if you're not in the basement. You know, a thing like Bond only works if there's allies remaining. Balanced Landing only works if you are dropping from a second story. Will Make It only works if on healing others. Vigil only works if you're going up against those effects. We're not going to talk about that. I did want to mention how there are situational perks and there are safety net perks. And there are some on the killer side of things as well. Looking at killer, so what are your crutch perks? Well, nurses is a crutch, barbecue and chili is a crutch. I would say no-ed is definitely a crutch. Ruin is a crutch. Make your choice. Rancor. Those are all examples of crutch perks. Now you have your situationals and your safety nets. Well, what is the difference between a situational and a safety net? Overcharge is a safety net. It basically gives you a better chance of locating survivors. Monster Shrine is a situational perk. Okay, it actually restricts you as a killer. Safety net perk. Thatophobia. It slows the game down by and rewards you for doing something you're ordinarily going to do. Unrelenting is a situational perk. It benefits if you miss attacks. It reduces the cooldown on them. You don't want to miss attacks, though. That makes it rather situational. Tinkering is a safety net. If a generator gets to 85%, you get a notification, and your terror radius drops like that. This lets you ambush survivors. Versus something like Fire Up, which is a situational perk. You have to fuck up the generators in order for this to come into play, pretty much. So that is an example. Even killers have these types of builds on. By the way, this is my build for Freddy, or not Freddy, Mike so far. It's weird, but just go with it. I think I'm pretty much going to finish up with this video because I want to talk about another video. So we're going to have that right behind this. I'm going to do 2 videos today. We're going to have this short one. So basically, to round off this video, I just want you to pay attention to how often a perk is used in-game and the scenario it's used in. For example, Stakeout is a safety net perk. That's another thing that I would say is a safety net. Slippery Meat is a situational perk. You know, looking at those types of examples, how often do you use Slippery Meat in-game? Well, to be honest, very rarely. Basically, it gives you 3 chances to get off the hook. So, unless you're one of those people that just likes to attempt to escape from the hook on their own, or if you're going up against a lot of trappers, then it becomes useful, but that's about it. Whereas Stakeout is always active. Anytime the killer is in your radius, you get those skill checks. So it's to your advantage to actually do that, because you can do other actions and still build up tokens for Stakeout. This is the kind of comparison you want to do when you're making builds. You know, No One Left Behind, in my opinion, is completely outmatched by something like Will Make It. Will Make It gives you a big boost in healing speed for a pretty long time, whereas No One Left Behind only kicks in once the exit gates are powered. You get a lot more blood points out of doing altruistic actions. So No One Left Behind with, We're Gonna Live Forever is a great 1-2 combo if you want to potentially double up on blood points and perform them slightly faster, but it's incredibly situational. However, something like Leader is not. Leader is a very strong perk to give you a similar benefit, just not with the blood points. So, we're gonna cut it here, and I've got another video that's gonna come up in just a sec. So, this is what you'll see when you come in.